Anti-Sovietism is also very important to justify the massive escalation in military spending. Since he's been in office, Ronald Reagan has spent $2 trillion on military spending. That's more than all the other presidents put together. Since Ronald Reagan has been in office, he's been the wildest, wild-eyed, craziest, wildest, maddest spender in the history of our country. The national debt, which was $900 billion when he came into office, and the largest peacetime debt ever rolled up, I think, was Jimmy Carter's $60 billion one year, maybe $80 billion the other year. Every year he has produced budget deficits. Did I say debt? I mean the largest deficit. Deficit is your yearly, in the red, deficit. The debt is the accumulation of all those deficits. $900 billion national debt. When Ronald Reagan leaves office, it will be $2,700 billion, or $2.7 trillion. He will have tripled the national debt. He will have added more to the national debt than all the other presidents in the history of the United States put together, peacetime and wartime. Jimmy Carter's biggest debt of $80 billion is less than half of Ronald Reagan's smallest debt of $170 billion. This year's deficit, this year's deficit is, Reagan's deficit this year is $220 billion, a record. We're going off the charts. And if you draw these deficits, you know, the presidents, different presidents, and you draw them, I wish I had a blackboard, you'd see FDR, he fought World War II, there was a lot of deficit spending, Truman, and then you get to Eisenhower, small, and it goes like that, and Ford and Nixon, suddenly bigger, Carter, and then you get Reagan's, and it goes off the chart. It will just go off the chart. You would need a special kind of paper to put it on. And they call him the Teflon president. He's not the Teflon president. They let him get away with all that because he treats them good. Because that debt was piled up from two sources. One, the massive escalation in military spending, and two, the massive tax cuts to the rich and to the big corporations in this country, with little cuts to the little guys. He gave little things to the little people and big favors to the big people. And that's where the debt comes. So how does he finance it all? We now see how he's able to do it. And through all that time, he cut from human services $140 billion he has cut from human services. That $140 billion will keep the Pentagon going for less than 4 months today, what the Pentagon is now spending every year. And that was cut. The hundreds of millions of dollars cut from the Women's, Infants, and Children program, from the supplementary social income program, which was for the most desperate people in our society, the disabled, the aged, the blind, the deaf. The WIC program, Women's, Infants, Children, was for those people, those kids who were starving, who couldn't even qualify for welfare or food stamps or weren't getting anything. It was like emergency aid. And he's cutting that stuff, and he cuts peanuts. And when you look at what he saved a few $100 million, enough to buy a few more tanks. That's what he's gotten out of that. And all that cutting, all that attack on human services doesn't amount to peanuts compared to what you spend on the military. Because human services amount to tens of millions and hundreds of millions, whereas the military is hundreds of billions. And that's the difference.